14 races on Saturday at Fairgrounds, including the Risen Star Stakes. Let's cap the card. Salutations and welcome, everyone. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and this is another episode of Capping the Card on NYRA Bets YouTube, where we are going to go through all 14 races on Saturday's Fairgrounds card. I'm going to give you my top pick, my top value play. Now, before we get into that, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe here on NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost. Just notifies you when new videos are dropping on the channel. We have race previews, full card analyses, special weekly programming like the Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks with myself and Kaylee Shapiro, Snowbirds with myself and Acacia Clement, handicapping and betting tutorials, and so much more. So press that like and subscribe button today. Well, like I said, welcome to Capping the Card. Premise is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to go through all 14 races on the Risen Star Day card. Gotta love those big cards at Fairgrounds. And I'm going to give you my top pick, my top value play. Now, my top pick's pretty self-explanatory. Top value play, also pretty straightforward, but sometimes it's a horse that I think has a real chance to upset the field, and I would absolutely include in my horizontal wagers, my pick fives, pick fours. And other times, it's a horse that I think is just going to outrun its odds. You know, big price, maybe 20-1 horse that I think is going to run second or third. So those are horses I'll try to call that out when there's a little bit of a distinction there in terms of a horse I think, hey, that's an underneath play, but one that could enrich your exactas trifectas. Listen, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a great card. Last week, hey, we hit some big prices last week. Lamplighter, Jack, Cassius. So that was great to see. Appreciate all of you reaching out to me. A couple of you hit that early pick four that I think cashed for like $2,400, if I'm not mistaken, with those two winning in back-to-back races. So that was great to see. Love connecting folks to winners. But listen, you can't rest on last week's laurels. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. So let's dive in to this Fairgrounds card and kick things off with one of many maiden special weight races on the card, particularly in that early first 7-race sequence. But this one is a $55,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-old fillies, going 5.5 on the turf. And you guys know me. Turf sprints are tough enough as they are. When you make it a maiden special weight turf sprint, it's not easy. But my general inclination is I'm always going to try to catch a price. And certainly you have a horse like Tempting Eve, who is your favorite, for Chris Hartman, Florent Giroux up on the mount. This one's finished second twice, debuted on the turf, ran really well last time out, ran well on the dirt as well in an off-track race. So has some versatility, has been working out beautifully. Here's the thing, Hartman, 1 for 44 at the Fairgrounds right now, 2%. Now listen, he's been getting horses close, 9 second-place finishes, 7 third-place finishes. So his horses have been running, but just not winning. You figure the law of averages is going to eventually turn. But I'm still, in a maiden turf sprint, I'm still going to try to beat the favorite, especially if there's a pretty logical alternative. I think you could look at Adam Rice's horse that's coming out of the Chad Brown barn with Axel Concepcion, Save the Queen, in number 7. That one's getting blinkers on, Lasix for the first time, and trying turf for the first time. There are definitely some things to like about that horse at 9-2. I'm going to go with a little bit of a bigger price as my top pick, and that is Kissin' Riches at 6-1. Trainer Joe Sharp, always a very high percentage trainer, particularly at Fairgrounds, winning about 25%. You get Jose Ortiz up on the mount. Jose, I think, is going to have a big day today. He's got a lot of really live mounts, and even when I didn't pick him to win, I still think he's got a lot of live runners in some of those races. So going to be interesting to see what sort of day he has versus his brother, Irad, who's also in town. But this one started on the turf as well. And last time out was in that off-turf race that Tempting Eve is coming out of also. And I think the one thing that you've seen is outside of the debut, where the horse really got shuffled pretty far back at the start, actually all the way back to last, and then passed a bunch of horses. That was encouraging to see. But you look at the last 2 efforts, the horse kind of is one-paced a little bit. I mean, it certainly calls that out in the notes, but just looking at the running lines and watching those races, you kind of get that sense. Still, it's a Munnings baby out of a Scat Daddy mare. Blinkers are coming on. I think that's going to make a big difference. And I really like the idea that we're going to see this horse's best effort potentially with blinkers on, getting back on the turf. Yes, there's a little bit of rain in the forecast, but the forecast at New Orleans has gotten dramatically better over the last 24 to 48 hours. So I'm not anticipating too much of a disruption to the turf races. Obviously, if it goes to the dirt, that changes the complexion a little bit. I think Tempting Eve certainly looks a lot tougher for sure. But this is, I think, a really exciting race and one where you can catch a little bit of a price on Kissin' Riches. Now, in terms of a value play, I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to go blinkers off for this one, and that's the number 9, Funny Lady at 8-1 for Michael Stidham with Ben Curtis aboard. I think Curtis actually has a couple of interesting horses that he's riding throughout the day, but this one's coming back from a little bit of a layoff, had last run in December, so about a 2-month layoff, but not dramatic in that regard. Here's the thing. This horse almost won basically running this trip, running a maiden special weight, going 5.5 on the turf at Colonial, then stretched out and went a mile at Colonial and actually ran pretty well, ran third. But again, maybe is a little bit one pace, though. We have seen this horse pass other horses before, particularly in that first turf effort at Colonial. Last time out at Fairgrounds, just off slow, just really didn't get the best trip. And I just didn't like kind of the way that race played out. Now we're getting second-time Lasix. This is a Godolphin owned and bred horse, so there's clearly some expectations. Sired by Twirling Candy, so you like that turf influence there. But I think at 8-1, outside post position, I just like the way this one looks coming into this race. I like the blinkers off angle. Maybe that helps perk the horse up a little bit, get that horse back to being a little bit more forward, but has traditionally sat more of a tracking trip, which I think is perfect from breaking from that outside post position. So I'm going to try to catch a little bit of a price there with Funny Lady. This is a very spready race. Listen, if you like Tempting Eve, I don't blame you for including that one. Save the Queen as well for Adam Rice makes a lot of sense. This is one, maybe you go 3, 4, even I hate going 5 deep while also including the favorite, but this is one where maybe you go 4 deep in that first leg. All right, well, let's go to race number 2 on the card, which is a $100,000 optional claimer, going a mile and a 16th for 3-year-old fillies. It's a field of 5, which is why you're seeing double, because there's honestly 4 of the horses are 3-1 or lower. So you have Pretty Sassy at 3-1. California Sunset at 5-2, Trust Fund Philly at 3-1, and Golden Gamble at 2-1. And then you have Sight to See at 6-1, who's the other McPeak horse. And that's the biggest price in the field. Listen, Golden Gamble, I get it. The horse finished second in the Untappable to Her Laugh, who we saw come back and I thought run very well on the Suncoast. She had a terrible break, but showed a lot of ability to make up ground late in that race. I thought that was actually still a pretty solid effort, all things considered. But obviously, this one came back, didn't run as well over a wet track, although the buyer speed figures went up. Getting Lasix for the first time for McPeak, Brian Hernandez up. I understand why this horse is your favorite. I'm still going to try to beat this horse. That debut race or that maiden breaking race was really kind of a perfect trip and really was able to draw off. And she's lost to some nice horses, no doubt. Simply Joking and Bless the Broken and Her Laugh. I mean, these are all nice horses that we're talking about here. So she's faced very good competition. Still, I'm going to try to beat her in this spot. And listen, you could look at a horse like Trust Fund Philly, who's getting back in the dirt for Peter Urton, although this one's stretching out. I don't necessarily love the pedigree for going long with that one, so I'm kind of against that horse. And then California Sunset for Brad Cox. Listen, very logical horse. Makes a ton of sense. Finished third in that Untappable behind Golden Gamble, and then lost to a horse, Anonym, who we're going to see run in the Rachel Alexandra last time out. So certainly has also been keeping very good company. Beat Golden Gamble in that maiden special weight race. Cox and Giroux, always a formidable duo. But I'm going to go with a little bit of value, if you can call it that, kind of the co-third choice on the morning line. And that is Pretty Sassy, or I guess the co-fourth choice on the morning line. Pretty Sassy. And this one's for Brendan Walsh, Edgar Morales up on the mount, Godolphin owned and bred. And this one is the half to Pretty Mischievous, who, of course, was also trained by Brendan Walsh and won the Kentucky Oaks. This one I thought ran really well last time out. And I think it was notable. A couple of things happened. Debut was at 6.5. And now we're stretching out. And the horse kind of was just not very quick out of the gate and kind of, didn't break terribly, but just didn't have that alert speed to really compete at 6.5. And so that's kind of what you saw in that race. And was able to pass some horses late to suggest more ground would be better. Well, 2 things happen. One, we go from 6.5 to a mile and a 16th next time out, and we get Lasix added. We also pick up Morales. Well, now we keep Lasix on. We stay at a mile and a 16th. Morales stays aboard. You get the inside trip, and the horse showed much better gate speed early to sit that tracking trip. I think this one sits the pocket trip. Quite frankly, maybe one of the two of these other horses decide to send. At the same time, Morales could be aggressive and just go to the front as well, because there's really not a slew of speed in this race. You would imagine Urton's horse, Trust Fund Philly, is going to try to go to the front just because this one's stretching out from 6. But it's interesting to see the sort of trip that Pretty Sassy could sit. I love the pedigree there. Obviously, they have to Pretty Mischievous, and this one's sired by Medaglia d'Oro. Walsh is just one of those trainers hitting at a 20% rate. And, when he teams up with Morales at Fairgrounds this year, has been hitting at a 30% rate with the 270 ROI. So, willing to take a shot with this one as a little bit of a price as both my top pick and my value play, knowing that there's really not a lot of value in this race. That's a 5-horse field with I think 4 very legitimate contenders. This is a conundrum of a race when you're putting together that early pick 5 ticket, because you're going to have to make some tough choices. If you're spreading in that turf maiden race, you hate to spread in a 5-horse race with 4 really logical horses. So you're going to have to cut some horses out and take a stand against 1 or 2 of them. That might be in the eye of the beholder. I certainly would understand that. And if you go, listen, I really like the Cox horse, I really like the McPeak horse, Golden Gamble, then maybe single that horse, take a little bit of a stand in that regard. So a couple of ways to play this early pick 5 sequence. Well, let's go to, I told you there were going to be a lot of maiden special weight races early in the card. And yet another one here. This one is for Louisiana bred fillies who are 3 years old, going a mile on the dirt. And on a day where we have the Albert Stall Memorial, I think it's only appropriate to pick a horse trained by Albert Stall Jr., which is Rosalba the Wicked. I have no idea if this is a reference in any way to the show or movie Wicked. People tell me it's good. I've never seen it. I have seen the Wizard of Oz. That concludes today's Matthew's Film Review. Now, Rosalba the Wicked. This one debuted at Fairgrounds going 6 furlongs over a wet track and kind of tired a little bit late, but was also doing a lot of the dirty work up front and was kind of dueling with other pace pressures. So, I don't mind the fact this horse, faded a little bit and is now stretching out to a mile. Blinkers are coming off. I think that's good. The horse gets to relax maybe a little bit, and you would imagine is able to keep some of that energy harnessed for going a little bit longer. And again, I just think this one is, like I said, a little bit interesting at a decent price. And we've seen this one have some nice offspring as well in terms of siblings. The dams had some nice offspring. So Rosalba the Wicked, 7-2 for Albert Stall, 58 buyer speed figure from that debut effort. I just think you're going to be able to see this horse continue to stretch out. Certainly, you could look at a horse like Canal Street on the inside for Brett Calhoun. That one's coming off of a third place finish, I should say. And then certainly the number 8 Mooney Pie, another very logical horse for Sam David Jr. Blinkers are coming on. This one, it finished, well behind Margie's Intention last time out, as did Canal Street. But here's the thing. You look at a horse like Mooney Pie, the last 2 horses that she lost to went on to win N2L allowance races next time out. So she's definitely been facing good horses. Blinkers are coming on, might help because she's just a horse that gives herself too much to do, quite frankly, at the start. She does not break particularly well. It's often coming from well back. I think that's one of the things I like about Rosalba the Wicked is this horse should be able to get up front or at least sit more of a tracking trip and be able to kind of get comfortable there. Eric Murray up on the mount. Now, in terms of a price, we're going to go to another Brett Calhoun horse, the other one, right? Because he has Canal Street, who I think is a legitimate win contender in this race for sure. But I really like Diva Beach as well. This one's getting the blinkers on. A lot of equipment changes in this race. Blinkers on, blinkers off, etc. for a lot of these horses. This is the one that's sired by Omaha Beach. And I love Omaha Beach as a sire. I think he's really good value at $35,000. And he turns out a lot of really good winners, particularly on the dirt. We've actually seen him starting to turn out better horses on the turf and synthetic too, after a really kind of ominous start to that with his first crop and second crop. But also you see good dam side pedigree as well. This is the half to Good Morning Diva, who was a graded stakes place dirt router. So there's definitely some ability there when you start looking at the female side of that family. And 8-1, I feel like is a very fair price on a horse that you could see a potential step forward, stretching out and getting the blinkers put on. This is a horse that had been coming from a little further off the pace. Maybe the horse is a bigger part of that pace, but I also think it's intriguing that Calhoun debuted this horse against Open Company at Churchill Downs. Well, it was a $130,000 sale. There's clearly some expectations. Now we're facing Louisiana breds. Last time out, finished third to a horse like Incognito Burrito, who I actually really like. And now I think the stretch out to a little bit longer is actually going to suit this horse fine. Omaha Beach Offspring hitting at a 16% rate, going 2 turns on the dirt. So a lot of things to like there. Jaime Torres up on the mount. I just think 8-1, you're getting a pretty honest price. And what feels like, if you think you can beat Mooney Pie and Canal Street, really feels like a very wide open race. And again, I have a lot of respect for both of those horses. But at some point, Mooney Pie is an interesting horse because, yes, 2/3 and a second, but has never really been close. That's the thing. Lost by 11 lengths last time out, 3 lengths the time before that, 5 1/4 lengths the time before that. So it's not as if this horse has been missing by a nose, missing by a neck, missing by a length. You could argue Canal Street maybe is a little bit better, but you could also say Canal Street has regressed a little bit from that debut effort where she ran a really good race and almost won. So again, coming out of 2 races where the winners went on to win allowance N2L races as well, because she's been in those races with Mooney Pie. But still, I think there's some potential reasons to try to take a little bit of a shot against the top 2. All right, well, let's go to yet another maiden special weight race on the card. 55,000 for 3-year-old fillies going 6 furlongs. This is open company, and this is a loaded field. This is a tough one, man. I spent a lot of time on this field. You could look at a horse like Atara for Will Walden. That horse is firing off some gate works that are unreal. And you get Luis Saez up. 47-2 gate work. That was a bullet. 46-2 gate work. That was a bullet. This one's got a lot of ability and has good dam side pedigree as well. Half to Simmering, half to a horse like Blue Squall, who is a pretty nice horse. So definitely some ability there. Sired by Bolt Doro, was a $450,000 purchase. I get it. If you want to look at that one at 3-1, if you want to look at Brad Cox's Complexity filly in this race, that makes a lot of sense. Velvet Vortex. And that one's had some nice workouts and is the half to FISA. Remember the Bob Baffert horse who won the Santa Anita Oaks and finished third in the Black Eyed Susan. So, clearly has some ability there. So there's a couple of options to go for. What ultimately caught my eye was number 5, Bundle. This is an interesting horse. Steve Asmussen trainee, Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. Plenty of things to like right there already. But this is a horse sired by Volatile. Now, Volatile is a nice sire, certainly, but is slightly above average, in terms of he's had 100 offspring that have raced, 17% win rate for those 100 offspring. They're pretty good in debut, 21% first time out, 2-year-old, 25% first time out, 3-year-old, with a very small sample size. And you look at the top 20 progeny, which you can do on DRF Formulator. One of the things that really sticks out to me is that volatiles don't really sell for much. 100,000, 160,000, 55,000, 275, 170, 315, 12,000, 150, 140, 40,000, 20,000, 80,000, 285, 45, 100, 320. You get a couple of nice horses in there, but there's also a lot of relative bargains. What attracts me to Bundle is this is a $1.15 million volatile who was purchased as a yearling in the Keeneland September sale. That tells me something, that they thought a lot of this horse to hold on to this one. Owner is Mike Rutherford, bred by 3 Chimneys. This one's just very interesting to me. Out of the mare and the dam Love and Pride, who is, of course, a Grade 1 winner in that Personal Ensign, and has turned out some nice horses in terms of turning out winners. You have a horse like Bella Runner, who won the Zia Park Oaks. That was who is one of her offspring, sired by Gun Runner. So you've had some nice ones. You even had a horse like Pranisha Julia, who won the Trapeze at Remington Park. So you have a couple of stakes winners in the female side of the family. And again, you just don't see many volatiles selling for this much money. Reminds me a little bit of Ferocious selling for $1.3 million, because you don't see many $1.3 million flatters. So it tells me this horse has something. Asmussen's one of the best at spotting these types of horses. And this one's had a really nice series of works. 48 flat gate work back on December 30th, bunch of nice 5 furlong works, and then goes back to give one more gate work before the start, 47-1. So this horse has some speed. You have Irada up 9-2. I think that one's interesting. I think there's just a couple of interesting angles there from a standpoint of pedigree, from a standpoint of sales price, expectations, etc. I don't always just go to the most expensive horse in the race, but if it was a gun runner, if it was a tap it, if it was a good magic, if it was one of these sires that we come to expect a lot from, that would make more sense. But when you see it from a volatile, you go, huh, okay, somebody must have clearly seen something in this horse, or this one really, just showed out as a yearling and now is finally debuting. So interesting to see that one. So that's going to be my top pick. My value play is number 8, Spying, and this is a gun runner and out of an elusive quality mare, trained by Brendan Walsh, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt. Oh, just those two teaming up here. This one also has had some nice works, and I like that Brendan's been working this one 5 furlongs out of the gate last time, going 1:03, and so plenty to like there, I think. Brendan's been pretty good at fairgrounds as well, winning 20% of his races. He's been getting some first-time starters out and across the wire. This one's 6-1. It's not a huge price, but I expect this race to be bet pretty competitively just because you have even a horse like Velvet Devil for Michael Tomlinson, who ran really well in debut, ran a 73 buyer, and is, I think, the top buyer in the field, if I'm not mistaken, out of what is mostly first-time runners. So there's definitely a lot of betting options to go around in this race that are, I think, really legit. So as a result, I think a horse like Spying could actually be a legitimate value play and might even float up from that 6-1 price. But another wide open race. Let's go to race number 5 on the card, which is a $55,000 allowance for 4-year-olds and up, going a mile on the turf. And again, a very competitive race. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of on a loop here saying that, but it's so true. This is a wide open field. You have a horse like Sicilian Defense for Cherie DeVaux, who's your morning line favorite. I'm going to try to beat that horse. I think there's a lot of speed in this race. And, you don't just have a horse like Sicilian Defense. You also have a horse like St. Armand's Key. You have a couple of other horses, even Shopper's Revenge trying turf for the first time. Sovereign's Joy is a horse that shows at least some good early speed. You have a horse like News at 9 who's shown some speed. There's a good amount of speed in this race. So I do worry about that. So as a result, I was looking for a horse to come from off the pace. And I landed on the number 3 Sandpipes for Lindsay Schultz with Florent Giroux up on the mount. This one's 4-1 on the morning line. I just think this one sits the right sort of trip, quite frankly, after just missing out 2 of the last 3 times. Now, this one has never crossed the finish line first. Actually was DQ'd into a first-place finish at Laurel 3 back. Then went and immediately started facing N1X Allowance Company and really showed that he belonged. Came from, finished second at Fairgrounds, first time out, last time out, stayed at Fairgrounds, and really kind of made up a lot of ground late in that race, showed a really good turn of foot, showed the ability to pass horses. I think it's understandable if you just looked at that maiden race, you might go, does this horse like passing other horses? But you look at that last effort, that horse had a nice turn of foot, absolutely could pass other horses. And so you get Giroux up now. Schultz is a nice trainer, 15% at Fairgrounds. I really like the way this one has been working leading up to this race. I love that minute flat or 1:01 5 furlong bullet leading up to this race. So you might get a little bit of a price because Cherie has a lot of good horses running. And, she's going to attract a ton of money in this sort of a spot. She's such a good trainer down there, 25%. Jose Ortiz is up on the mount, 29%. Those two team up to win 38% of the time. So listen, Sicilian Defense is going to take some money, but willing to try to beat that one just because of the pace dynamics in this race. Another interesting horse is My Boy Tony. And this one's getting blinkers on, and it's notable because I don't think it's blinkers on we need more speed. I think it's blinkers on we need to learn how to finish. And we need this horse to concentrate a little bit more. Coming off a little bit of a layoff for Eddie Keneally, picks up Luis Saez, has to work out a trip from that 11 post for sure. But I think the blinkers on might give just a tad bit of speed out of the gate. And this horse has actually some decent tactical speed out of the gate, can kind of sit that tracking trip. I think that would be ideal. The key is this horse 1 for 11 winning with 5 second-place finishes. This horse does come in second a lot. So the blinkers on, I think that's what the addition of the blinkers is for. We don't necessarily need to inject more speed into this horse as much as we need this horse to finish a little bit more strongly. So has run some really nice races against this level of competition, going 1.5 miles at Churchill, going 1.8 miles at Churchill last time out. So has to kind of, come here to fairgrounds and try this turf for the first time, but has one going this distance, obviously. Broke its maiden going a mile. I think a mile might actually be even better because this horse likes to come from off the pace. With the amount of pace in this race, should give this horse plenty to run at coming from home. So as long as this horse can work out a trip from that 11 post, I think my boy Tony presents some interesting value in a horse that has very competitive Beyer speed figures in this field. Actually, last out Beyer is quite strong of an 81. Let's go to what is sure to be a very fun and very attention-grabbing maiden race on the card. Race number 6, $55,000, 3-year-old maiden special weight for fillies. Why is there going to be so much attention? Because of a horse that I don't have up on the screen, Ahava. Ahava is the half to Vava. Now, this is a horse trained by Cherie DeVaux, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. I've already told you how good those two are together, 38%. This one has some really nice workouts as well. 47 and 2 gate work, 2 back. Cherie's worked this horse going 5 furlongs. This horse has run well out of the gate. Still, it's a debut effort, and you're breaking from the inside rail. Man, if she had picked anywhere else other than the inside rail or the outside post, I probably would have picked up Ahava as my top selection at 3-1. Ultimately, though, there's a lot of first-time runners in this race. A lot of debut runners, a lot of nice debut runners, too. Horses that have potentially some really big futures. But I'm going to go with a Phil Bauer horse who's making the second start. Bauer is so good second start for maidens, 30% over the last year. And, he's another one, a little bit like Chris Hartman, 1 for 10 at the meet, but 7 for 10 hitting the board. So his horses are firing. This is a perfect example of one in Daring Madison at 7-2, who ran third in debut. And had to kind of have a little bit of a patient trip, stays the same distance now. Jaime Torres remains aboard. And I just think this one has by far and away the best last out Beyer and the best Beyer in the field, and has the opportunity to move forward from that race, I think. And you might look, well, the horse was a little even, but I think it was a little bit of a tougher trip than you might imagine. And I like the fact this horse got just a nice maintenance work coming out of that race last week on February 8th. So, Bauer is turning this one back, relatively quickly on about 3 weeks rest. So I just think that one at 7-2 has a little bit of experience over some of these horses that are, first-time starters, things like that. So I'm going to try to beat Ahava, and I have a feeling Ahava, while the morning line is 3-1, that's the type of horse that could attract a ton of money, because once people know it's the half to Vava, Cherie, Jose, that's going to take a lot of money. So I wonder if, as a result, a lot of other horses are going to float up. Now, you have a horse as my value play here, Brad Cox, Flavian Pratt, 6-1. Brad Cox, a debut runner at Fairgrounds, that's not a bad idea. This is a guy who's winning 32% of his entries for the meet in terms of Cox. He and Pratt, I should say, I'm so used to him with another French jockey, but he and Pratt teaming up win at a 38% rate over the last year. That's just incredible. This one was a $750,000 daughter of Nyquist, so plenty to like there in terms of the pedigree. I think the works have been very workmanlike. They have not wowed you. There's not a lot of bullets. There's not a lot of big, oh my gosh. But this one just feels like a horse that, again, would Cox debut this horse at Fairgrounds on the Risen Star Day undercard, easy for me to say, if there wasn't something there. So such a good trainer first out, connections that really, make sense. The workout pattern has been steady. You have a good first out sire in Nyquist, obviously getting Lasix for the first time in that debut. Some expectations in terms of a $750,000 OBS March sale last year. So definitely like this one at Unwavering Trust, number 8 at 6-1. And again, some of these prices could float up because I have a feeling Ahava is going to take a lot of money in this race. Well, let's go to race number 7, which is the final of the many maiden special weight races on the card. Or actually, it might not be the final. No, it isn't. It's the second to last maiden special weight race on the card. But this one is going 6 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds. And again, some of these names just keep popping up. But Cherie DeVaux, Jose Ortiz, listen, you can't fade them all day. I think they're going to have a good day. And I like a horse like Retribution quite a bit in this race for Belladonna Racing. And sired by Vacoma, who I love as a first out sire, loves sprinting. And this one's Granny's Drink produced one other runner, and that's Granny's Connection, who was a New York bred up here for Tom Morley, who won the Union Avenue Stakes and was a 5-time winner in 7 career starts and never missed the exacta. So productive mare in that regard to team up with a horse like Vekoma. This one's been working out beautifully in the mornings, 47-3 work, a 47-4 work. So definitely like the way this one has been working leading up to this race. Listen, Cherie's got another good one in this race, Development Fee, right next door with IRATA. So that's going to be fun to see. And that one has some really nice works as well. Sired by Volatile, who we just spent some time talking about. The dam is maybe not quite as prodigious in terms of producing first out winners, is 0 for 2. So that's kind of one of the reasons maybe I gave a little bit more credence to Retribution at 4-1. Plus, it's a little bit of a better price. So I'll be interested to see which of those two ends up taking more money. You have a horse like Kalahari Dream for Phil Bauer in this race. Blinkers on, but the horse has finished second 3 times in 4 career starts. I think you can toss the synthetic race last time out, but still, it's a Triple Crown nominated horse that's going to attract some attention. In terms of the value play, though, I kind of like number 6, Cat Fast at 12-1 for Tom Amos. Yes, the dam's first out is 0 for 8. So these are not, maybe this is more of an underneath play. Maybe this is more of a vertical exotic, an exacta, trifecta. But you have some nice horses that this one's turned out over the years, and multiple time winners. You even have a horse like Callback, who was a nice won the Las Virgenes back in 2015. So this one's produced a lot of good horses over the years. You have a sire in McKinsey, who I really like a lot as a sire, and who's been doing better and better with his first out numbers, and seems to actually be even a later developing type of a horse, like kind of like Gunrunner. But really like this one a lot. And this horse debuted going 5.5 in an off-turf race. And I just gave up some ground late, but we're getting a little bit of a jockey upgrade from Axel Concepcion to Tyler Gaffleone. And Tom's keeping this horse on the dirt. And the horse has been training really well leading up to this one, particularly that February 8th work, 48-4, getting ready for this. And I just think this, Tom put some more additional conditioning into this horse. Came out of that race January 16th, came right back 9 days later and worked going 5 furlongs and did it in 1 minute and 2. Then had a little bit of a maintenance work on February 1st and then came back with a sharp 4 furlong work. So I like the additional conditioning this one's built since that debut. Ran the 60 Beyer speed figure, which I think can absolutely be improved upon. That was over a little bit of a wet track as well. So maybe you get a dry, fast track, which it looks like conditions are getting better and better for Saturday. I think at 12-1 in a field that feels very wide open, this is a horse that could jump up and surprise a little bit, run into that exacta, run into that trifecta, superfecta, to maybe make it a little bit more rich. For a trainer who we should say, in Tom Amos, very good getting horses ready second start. So debut, Tom usually lets them run into shape a little bit, doesn't usually get them all the way cranked up. Now, second start, this is a trainer who hits at a much higher level in that second start and has done it pretty regularly over his career. So definitely one that I like at a little bit of a price. Well, let's move to the first of many stakes races on the card, and that is the Colonel Power Stakes going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. And we talked about how I loathe the turf sprints, and I just always try to go for a price. And listen, I'm going to try to beat Mansa Musa, a horse I really like a lot for Bill Mott. And still one of the funniest memories I had of this summer was when Mansa Musa finished second in the quick call to Star of Mystery. And I remember Junior Alvarado walking off the track talking to Bill Mott. And he goes, I thought we were in a perfect position. And all of a sudden, that other horse just came flying right by. And Jesus. And it's and Star of Mystery. Yeah, I mean, that was quite an effort that day. But Mansa Musa, she ran a huge race, but has really not run back to that since that race. Finished third in the Franklin Simpson, but was a little disappointing going longer in the Byron Station. And now we're cutting back to turf sprinting again. Listen, there's plenty to like about this horse. One on Lasix before and is getting Lasix again. The blinkers remain on. I rad up on the mount. And, there's plenty to like there. But at the same time, this is also a horse that just doesn't win a ton and kind of finishes second, finishes third a bunch of times. So I'm going to try to beat this one with No Nay Hudson. Horse coming off a little bit of a layoff for Wesley Ward. Ward is always so good off these layoffs, and this horse looks absolutely ready to roll. Has been training on the turf down in Palm Meadows, I should say, and has been turning in some very impressive 5 furlong works getting ready, including a bull at 59 flat. There's a 58 and 3 that was third of 23. So this one's been working itself back into shape. Picks Flavian Pratt up on the mount. This one has good speed. I love the way that this horse can sit that type of right trip. In other words, sitting the trip where the horse can track the pace, doesn't need to get to the lead, has good speed though, but there's not much speed in this race. That's the bizarre part, is it's a turf sprint with a bunch of closers. So, a horse like Mansa Musa and maybe Irad gets aggressive and decides to go to the front. I would actually love that, because I don't think Irad's as good on the lead as other jockeys. And so if Flavian can, work out that trip to just kind of track the pace, and which should not be that aggressive, I think this is a horse that absolutely can run well, won in debut, and has, run well in other spots as well on the turf, stakes winner. So definitely think this one has the chance to give you a little bit of value, at least at 9-2 in what is a pretty wide open field. Now, in terms of my value play, going to go to the number 7, Demolition Duke for Brendan Walsh. Jose Ortiz, again, another Ortiz horse that I think has a real chance in this race. This one, the biggest problem with this horse is this horse likes to come from well off the pace. That's a problem, because I don't think there's a lot of speed in this race. That said, I'm willing to, again, draw a line through really the last 2 efforts, one on synthetic and one on the dirt in an off-turf race. You isolate the 5.5 furlong races, fairgrounds races, there's a lot of good efforts there. One going 5.5 at Churchill, 3 back, finished second at Kentucky Downs going 6.5, ran third, going 5.5 at Ellis Park, way back in August. So this horse has some nice starts. And I wonder if this horse maybe can get a little bit more aggressive when this horse has stretched out to a little bit longer, as it did at Churchill back in June. You've seen this horse be able to sit a little bit closer to the pace. I wonder if Jose tries to be maybe a little bit more aggressive with this horse, gets this horse sitting just mid-pack. If you sit mid-pack in this race, I think then this horse has a real chance to upset at a little bit of a price, and especially at 12-1. So, Brendan on the turf is a trainer I tend to just trust a lot. And I think he wouldn't place this horse in the spot if he didn't think this horse was a stakes caliber runner. And again, you're not having to switch off Lasix in Louisiana, so that's really not much of a question mark or a consideration. I just think Demolition Duke, maybe more of an underneath play, maybe one to consider because he's going to come running late. So maybe doesn't quite get there because of the pace scenario, but still 12-1, I think, can enrich some tickets for you, whether it's, maybe hitting on a horizontal or at the very least just cashing out in an exacta trifecta. Well, let's go to the final. Now, this is actually the final maiden special weight race on the card for 3-year-olds going a mile on the 16th. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to set an alarm on your phone, because this race is at 5 o'clock Eastern time. And I guarantee you at 5:03 Eastern time, someone somewhere on the internet is going to say, the Derby horse you really want out of the Risen Star Day card is coming out of this maiden special weight race. There's always very smart people, very wise guys who try to always get, that's the Derby horse. Last year, of course, if you remember, it was Tuscan Sky, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, who won essentially this race last year over a whopping 3-horse field. And I was immediately told how impressive this horse was. And then this horse went on to not really do much. And so we're going to talk more about him, though, in a little bit, and why I think he might be able to start doing a little bit more today. But wise guys aside, this is an interesting race because there are a lot of very evenly matched horses in this race. You look at, again, Cherie and Jose have another nice one in Cromwell, 3-1. I mean, again, I feel like a broken record. I mean, as every race you look, Cherie and Jose have a really nice horse. And you go, there's a lot of logic there. But at some point you can't, Jose and Cherie aren't going to win 10 races. So, or if they do, it's going to be some sort of a record. And, then I'll look like an idiot for picking against him on a few races. But, again, very serious horse in Cromwell, who admittedly, though, has started to pick up a little bit of a reputation of finishing second, but lost to a horse like Hypnus, who's a very nice horse for Kenny McPeak last time out. And again, reasons to try to, play against this one. You have a horse like Yinzer, who I think is an interesting horse who has taken money in the past, but really not come through. And, you could make an excuse of the wet track last time out. Was really close, actually, to back at Fairgrounds. Finished fifth, but was by less than a length. Lost to a horse like Mo Quality, who was a pretty nice runner in debut. So, maybe at 8-1, that horse can do a little something there. You have a Spurgeon and Morlock. A lot of nice horses in this race. But I don't feel like there's any major Derby horses. But I will say there's another Triple Crown nominated horse that's only in America. 4-1 for Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz Jr. A couple of things I like here. One, the blinkers are coming on. I like that because this horse, I think was maybe a little one-paced in that debut, which we'll get to in a second. The other thing is this horse has been working out beautifully. Todd had this horse, ran a 47-4 bullet going 4 furlongs. You don't see Pletcher horses running bullets like that. You rarely see Todd's horses going out and running a 47-4. Even when they run bullets, it's usually like first of 12, 48-2, or something like that. So to see a 47-1, you go, wow. Or 47-4, you go, wow, that horse really has something. Horse also has the foundation of already having gone 2 turns in debut. Speaking of that debut, the winner. Oh, just a little horse named Burnham Square, who, of course, we saw come back to win the Holy Bull in impressive fashion and improve his Beyer speed figure. Now, only in America gets Lasix for the first time, gets blinkers put on. Interestingly enough, Pletcher over the last 5 years, 26% in maiden special weight races with blinkers on in dirt routes in those second starts. So, like a lot of things about this horse at 4-1, and going to use this one as my top selection. Now, in terms of a value play. Last week, we went to a Shug McGahee horse, Cassius, as a value play because I said, listen, Shug's horses rarely ever fire in debut. Well, we're going to try to go to the well 2 weeks in a row. And another trainer whose horses rarely fire in debut, and that's Kenny McPeak. Classic Mac. This one, sired by McKenzie, who is a sire who, again, I like a lot. I particularly like him going long. Out of the mare, Simplify. This one has produced a lot of first out winners. And that's what I like. This is a productive mare, 7 raced horses, 6 winners, and 3 first out winners. And 5 of those horses, all of the 7 finished on the board. So this is just a filly and a mare who has produced a lot of great runners and a lot of consistent, precocious first out runners, sired by McKenzie, who, like I said, has, I think, been getting better and better and better, particularly stretching out. McPeak, interesting. If you look at the numbers, he's 7% first time out in maiden special weights. Terrible. But if you look at maiden special weight first time out dirt routes, 14%. A little bit better to say that this is a point that Scott Shapiro made, and I have a lot of respect for Scott. He goes, he tends to debut some of his stronger horses going long. Now, it's not always the case, but you do tend to see him debut some of those better horses going long. So not surprising that he hits at a little bit of a better rate. McKenzie, a first outsider, I like quite a bit, has already a really strong average winning distance for his offspring, 7.1 furlongs. Just to put that in perspective, Vekoma, average winning distance for his first crop, 6.2 furlongs. So almost a whole furlong difference in terms of an average winning distance for the McKenzies versus the Vekomas. That kind of tells you where those 2 offspring are going to go. One's going to go routing, one's going to go sprinting. One's going to the Derby, one's going to the Pat Day Mile. And by the way, I'd love to have a horse to go to either of those races, so that's not a knock on either. But Classic Mac, 10-1, going to take a little bit of a shot there with that Kenny McPeak horse. Let's go to the Alstall Memorial, and now we're just going stakes races the rest of the way. And in this one, we're going to go to Ignacio Correas IV, and you guys know if you've been watching this program at ever, I have a lot of respect for Ignacio Correas. I have a lot of respect for him bringing up his horses from Argentina. And this one is, he brought up 6-year-old mare and won in debut up here in North America at Keeneland. And, won at 3-1. So it was taking a little bit of money that day. This is a horse that was a stakes winner, a grade 1 winner down in Argentina, and hasn't run since. But Correas has been working this horse nicely and working this horse back for quite a while leading up to this race. Has been working over the poly track at Keeneland, firing off some bullet works, firing off some just very strong, consistent 5 furlong works. And again, I think this horse sits the right sort of trip because I think there is at least a moderate amount of pace in this race. And what I like about this horse is this horse can sit kind of a stalking or a tracking mid-pack trip. I think that's perfect because there is a lot of speed. And I think that this one, Nanda Dia, can sit the sort of trip where The speed goes out. Jose has this one behind the speed and really kind of gets first crack at the winners. So I just think this one, 7-2, it's going to be a very, very flat betting race because you could look at a horse like Lovely Princess at 4-1, who I think makes a lot of sense. I think you could look at a couple of other runners in this race, and even some of the also eligibles who might be able to draw in as a little bit of a price. But a horse like Stir Crazy at 6-1 is another one that's going to attract some attention. So I think there's some horses in here that are going to attract the attention of bettors. And as a result, again, I think Nanda Dia is going to be maybe a tepid favorite, but you're still going to get a little bit of a price on her. Now, in terms of my value play, I have an official value play and then I have a crazy bomb. Okay. So I'll preface it by saying this. My official value play is Tufani. Tufani at 10-1 is a really interesting horse. And maybe it's an interesting horse to include underneath, although the horse rarely finishes underneath. This horse either wins or really doesn't hit the board very often. And 12 career starts, 6 victories, 8 times hitting the board. So when this horse fires, it's usually pretty impressive. Now you could look, some of the races have been against, restricted stakes company, things like that. But this one won the Pago Hop last year at Fairgrounds and won it with a huge turn of foot late and drawing off. Really nice effort that day. Michael Stidham has this horse coming off the bench. This one won off the bench last year as well. So this horse can fire off of a layoff, has actually fired off of layoff a couple of times and won a couple of times off the bench. So that's very promising to see. And I just think a 10-1, this one, again, is going to be coming from off the pace, has won over the Fairgrounds turf before, 4 for 7 winning at this distance. Ben Curtis up, he's been riding this horse for a while, has had this horse for 3 of the victories. So I just feel like this one has some ability, actually 4 of the victories, I should say, has some ability. At 10-1, you're getting a little bit of a value play, I think, in a horse like Tufani. And my crazy idea is the number 8 Champagne Rose. And I should mention a horse like Way to Be Marie is another one who makes a lot of sense for Rob Atras. That one I'm absolutely including in my late pick 5 ticket. So just to let you know how my late pick 5 looks, we'll be including the number 10 Way to Be Marie in there as well. So I want to give that horse a shout because I do like that one quite a bit at 8-1. Tufani was a little bit of a bigger price. That's why I mentioned that one as my official value play. But my crazy idea is Champagne Rose at 30-1. Kenny McPeak bringing a horse up from Brazil, second start off of about a 8-month layoff, and this one had to run on the dirt over a sloppy sealed track in an off-turf race. Quite frankly, I almost like that because it threw people off the scent. This is a horse that won a grade 1 down in Brazil. Now, you could question the quality of that field, but one going 1.25 miles. I'm not worried about distance at all, but is also one going 1 mile, so has plenty of options there. Now, the reason also this one's not my official value play, the horse is cross-entered at Oaklawn, which is interesting because Oaklawn, of course, does not have a turf course. So it is interesting if Kenny's running this one at Fairgrounds or Oaklawn. The horse has been training at Fairgrounds. I have a feeling this horse is going to stay at Fairgrounds, but you never know. Maybe Kenny runs this one on the dirt and just says that's where we're going to go, and maybe just, getting a dry track would be better for this one. But there's something there. There's something there. This horse won 4 of his first 5 races before coming up here, debuted in a stakes race, and is now being entered in another stakes race. So there's clearly some expectations for McPeak here for this horse. So again, it's a crazy idea at Champagne Rose at 30-1, but I at least wanted to shout that horse out in my value play. Well, let's go to the Mind Shaft. And I told you we talk about a couple of other horses, talk about a horse like Tuscan Sky who's in this race, who I think is actually, it will be on my late pick 5 ticket. I like Tuscan Sky quite a bit in this race. I think the race sets up well for him in this spot. I would not be shocked at all if Tuscan Sky wins with Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. And like I said, will be absolutely a horse I'm using in my late pick 5 sequence. I'm going to try to beat Catching Freedom in this race, though. This horse coming off of a pretty long layoff, having last run in the Ohio Derby and disappointing as the 2-5 favorite that day. I want to see this horse be able to take a step forward from running those repeated 97s that he ran last year when he finished 4th in the Kentucky Derby, 3rd in the Preakness, won the Louisiana Derby. A horse has a ton of back class. I'm thrilled to see him back on the track, getting Lasix for the first time, coming off a pretty long layoff. Cox and Pratt, there's plenty to like there with those angles. The problem is this horse comes from well off the pace, always seems to give himself too much to do. And when he tries to sit close to the pace, I feel like he doesn't, he flattens out a little bit. So I'm going to be interested to see where does Pratt put this horse early? How much work does he have to do? I sometimes worry about those horses that have a big late kick coming off of a layoff because that late kick isn't always there, that first start off. So something to just to keep in mind. Now, where am I going for my top selection? I'm going to Hall of Fame. And to be clear, if this race was anywhere other than Louisiana, I would not be using this horse. This horse is a little bit of a Lasix horse. Now, you could also say that corresponds with the horse stepping up in class. You're not wrong, okay? But it is notable that the 3 starts, this horse has had 6 career starts, 3 with Lasix, 3 without Lasix. The 3 starts with Lasix, the horse has averaged a 96 Beyer speed figure and won those races by a combined 18 1/4 lengths. In the 3 starts without Lasix, the horse has recorded an average 76 Beyer speed figure, a 20-point difference, and has lost those 3 races by a combined 22 3/4 lengths. This horse is just 0 or 1. Either you're getting a phenomenal horse or you're getting a dud. 4 to 1 is not much of a price to find out on, but what I will say is Asmussen gave this horse a long time off after that Louisiana Derby from March till December. This horse has come back since then and done nothing wrong. Won against Allowance Company off the bench, stepped up against Optional Claiming Company and blew the field out. It was admittedly a short field, but went straight to the front and got the job done with Jose aboard as the 1-5 favorite. Now the horse comes into this spot, 4 to 1. We're stepping back up in class, but we're keeping on Lasix. We're 2 for 2 at the distance. And I just think this horse can sit a couple of trips because I know Batten Down is going to go to the lead in the mine shaft because that's what Batten Down does, and that's the only way he knows how to win. So I know he's going to go. Hall of Fame has shown the ability to win from off the pace. One tracking as a maiden breaker, and then that race off the bench was also tracking. So doesn't need the lead. I think that's an important thing to make a distinction about. Obviously, there's always been a ton of expectations with this horse, $1.4 million sale, and I doubt we're ever going to recoup that on the track, but I do think this is a horse that has the ability to move forward in this type of a spot, particularly keeping Lasix on for this race. So that's going to be my top pick. Honestly, my value play should have been Tuscan Sky, but that horse is 9 to 2. It's not much of a value play, and I have a feeling people are going to bet Tuscan Sky a little bit in this race, but I really like that horse a lot. But as a result, I want to give you guys something that's at least a little bit juicier than 9 to 2. Como Rabino Olmide is a Robertino Diodoro horse who I think absolutely has a shot in this race. And this was a horse that just lost last time out to Hit Show in that Louisiana Stakes at Fairgrounds over a sealed track, but has run well over dry tracks also. And I just think this one has some ability. Diodoro has this horse firing last 3 times out. And really, quite frankly, the horse has not really run a bad race. I mean, you look at those Beyer speed figures, they've all been solid. Yes, he can't beat Hit Show, and he's lost to Skippy Longstocking and horses like that, but these are nice horses that he's losing to. So he's really not done much wrong in his career. And even the one time he went on the turf, it wasn't really a bad effort. His only really poor start was like 4 back at Keeneland, where he finished 6th and kind of faded late that day. Outside of that, this horse tends to run his race. He's got good speed, but I love the outside post. He doesn't need the lead. He'll probably sit just off Batten Down. And again, I think just kind of an interesting horse for Diodoro at 8 to 1, who could present some really interesting value in this race. Let's go to the final turf race on the card, which is the Fairgrounds Stakes. And again, a really interesting race here. You have a horse like Gigante for 7 to 2 for Steve Asmussen with Jose Ortiz aboard. Again, Jose cannot win every single race on Saturday at Fairgrounds. Now watch him win 13 or 14 of them once I say that. But a horse I really like a lot is What Say Thee. It's a horse I like quite a bit in this race. I also like taking Candy for Cherie, but I do wonder if distance is an issue for that horse. Going a mile and an eighth after going a mile and a 16th the last couple of times out, or going a mile. So I do have a couple of questions about the distance with that one, but I don't have a question on distance with a Mike Maker horse because that's what they do. And this one, 3 for 4 winning at the distance, coming off a little bit of a layoff for Maker. Louis Saez up. I love Saez on these types of horses that are going to come from mid-pack off the pace. He's such a strong finisher and such a strong jockey. But I think this one, has won off the bench before, and I think can win off the bench now. This was a just a typical Mike Maker reclamation project. Got this horse and claimed this one from Jack Sisterson for $35,000, and then immediately stepped this horse up, won on the turf in a starter allowance 50, then won in an $88,000 N1X allowance. Then we're winning in an optional claimer. Then we're winning a stakes race. Then last time out, we're winning a $100,000 optional claimer. This is a horse that suddenly has found new life under the Maker barn. And it's not as if the horse has taken a massive step forward in terms of buyer speed figures. He has incrementally gotten faster, which is what I like to see. It wasn't this immediate perk up necessarily that you saw with Maker. It was just spotting this horse at the right place, I think, getting this horse and finding the right field for them to be successful. That's what Maker does so well here, winning at a 22% clip for this meet. He and Saez always are formidable down at Fairgrounds. So, like I said, I just think this one at 9-2 going to save a lot of ground, get that inside trip, and then maybe Louis finds a seam on the rail, or he can tip out at the top of the stretch. But I just think this one, because there might be maybe not quite as much pace, but some pace in this race, I'm going to go with a horse like What Say Thee. Now, I mentioned there might not be a ton of pace in this race, and if one of these horses doesn't fire or maybe break quite as cleanly, I think my value play is I'd rather be blessed at 8-1 for Chris Hartman, Ben Curtis. I mentioned Chris Hartman 1 for 44 at Fairgrounds, but 17 for 44 hitting the board. So clearly has been hitting the board at a pretty regular pace. His horse has been running honest. This is a traditional horse that loves to run honest. 16 for 25 hitting the board lifetime. So you have a trainer that's been firing pretty well, but not winning, a horse that fires pretty well, but doesn't win all the time. So I think it's kind of a good combination in some ways. Getting back on the turf, this one has speed figures well enough to compete here. And again, there's not a load. There's nobody else that needs the lead necessarily in this race. Maybe Dean Martini is going to go to the front, but I do wonder if Dean Martini's fast enough going this distance to get to the front here. Taking Candy's going to sit close, but it may not go straight to the front. I just think I'd rather be blessed. Interesting horse at 8-1 could end up carving out the right sort of trip, and had shown the ability to pass horses before, so doesn't necessarily need the lead. And again, is able to keep Lasix on, which I think is a critical component in this race, but taking a little bit of shot there with that horse. Well, let's go to the Kentucky Oaks prep. Rachel Alexandra going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf. And we have a field of 6. Now you say, Matthew, there's a number 7 horse in this race. There is indeed, but the number 3, Ballerina Doro, is scratching due to a spiked fever. She's going to be fine, it appears, but is out of this race. I think as a result, and I shouldn't say as a result because she doesn't really change the pace complexion one bit, I think Simply Joking is a chance to upset Good Cheer. Now listen, Good Cheer is going to be your overwhelming favorite in this race. It's going to be odds on, probably 2-5, 3-5 come post time. She is perfect 4 for 4, has done absolutely nothing wrong, won the Rags to Riches, won the Goldenrod, has never been on Lasix. So you don't have any worries there. Godolphin owned and bred, Brad Cox, Louis Saez, plenty of things to like there with Good Cheer. My issue with her is twofold. One, 86, 86, 86 the last 3 times out. I want to see her show another dimension. I want to see her take a step up. She absolutely could. Hasn't run since November. She absolutely could have matured. She's been working out nicely for Cox leading up to this race. She likes to come from off the pace. There's not a lot of speed in this race. I don't think Anonima is going to make much of a pace presence in this race. Maybe Aldine is going to try to press, but I think Jaime Torres aboard. He's done this before with Seize the Gray in the Preakness, in the Pennsylvania Derby. Just go with Simply Joking. This horse has sprinter speed, and I think it's just going to send. And Whit Beckman's got a couple of nice horses. This one is the half to Drum Roll Please, sired by Practical Joke. I think, again, if this race was at 1 mile and an 1/8, I'm all over Good Cheer. 1 mile and 16, I think Practical Jokes can get that distance. And so willing to use this one, as I think she can potentially shake loose and be lone speed and give you a little bit of value in a race where, again, all the money is going to go to Good Cheer as a result. Would it shock me if Good Cheer won? Absolutely not. She's the most likely winner of the race. Are there going to be tickets I have Good Cheer on? Absolutely. And you'd be foolish not to. So I think, whether it's a backup ticket or more of a defensive ticket, but bottom line is it's going to be hard to fade Good Cheer entirely in this spot. But if I'm going to try to find some value in this race, the second choice at least presents an interesting alternative from a pace perspective. Now, in terms of value in this race, I actually really do like Bless the Broken for Will Walden at 12-1. more of an underneath play, strictly, because I think the top two are the top two, and I don't think there's much competition there. But I think Blessed and Broken's interesting enough to include in your exactas, trifectas at a little bit of a price. This horse ran second in the Silver Bullet Day. Two Simply Joking was really one of the only horses that was making up ground that day. Absolutely like the slop. There might be a little bit of moisture in the track, so that's something to keep mind of. But this one's gotten faster and faster for Will Walton since coming to his barn. So I think there's at least something there to like. And I just think that the combination of the Uncle Mo influence up top, the tap of influence underneath, this horse is ascending and continuing to get better. Should be able to sit a trip, in a shorter field where maybe she's a little bit closer than she normally would be and is able to make up some ground. So I think more of an underneath play there for Blessed the Broken. Well, let's go to the final race on the card, which is the Risen Star 50-point Kentucky Derby prep race. This is a huge field, but there was a massive scratch that was announced on Thursday evening. And that is that Jonathan's Way, the second choice at 4-1 for Phil Bauer, is scratching out of this race due to a low blood count issue. And so hoping for a quick recovery for this horse. Absolutely. That said, I was playing against Jonathan's Way in this race. I just don't know about the going of the mile and eighth with his pedigree, but really love East Avenue in this spot. This is your favorite. And I just think Brendan has this horse ready to roll. I was there at Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup, and that race is a complete toss to me. A complete toss. They popped the gates open so fast that day, I didn't even have a chance to pull my phone out to take a picture. And I already had my phone up. They popped the gate so fast, I couldn't even do this. I was here, and I couldn't even go up there. It was an unreal start in that regard. East Avenue was on the inside rail. They popped the gates. The horse broke terribly, and the race was over. And also, they went in a merry-go-round, basically, with the exception of the one horse coming over from Europe who finished third, Hill Road, that day. And East Avenue, though, like I said, total toss of a race. You look at before that, combined victories by 13 and a quarter lengths. And you go back to you got two easy leads. Yeah, he did. He absolutely did. And I think he might be able to do that again, or he might be able to track. Brendan Walsh has always said this horse can track. This horse can rate, that they rate this horse off of his workout partner in the mornings. So Brendan doesn't have any concerns that this horse can rate. The dam is a half to Cody's Wish. There's plenty of pedigree here in terms of Godolphin, owned and bred. The distance should not be an issue at all. I remember Tyler saying after winning that Breeders' Futurity that it took all of his strength to pull this horse up because he just wanted to keep running. He's a horse that when you watch him work, his ears are perked. He's happy to do his job. That's something Kaylee Shapiro, my colleague, always points out. Yes, he's going to probably be below even money now, but I think he is that good of a horse in this race. So he's my top pick. Now, in terms of a value play, you could go to a few different spots. I know Kaylee loves American Promise, and I know Andy Sterling likes him, this horse too. Maybe. The horses run against phenomenal competition. Gets the inside rail, is probably going to go to the front with Keith Asmussen aboard. If he runs back to that race 2 back, which was over a wet track, he's got a chance. The Southwest ride was not great. It was not a good, it was just, in a lot of ways, you could toss that effort. And if you look at it otherwise, this is a horse that had been improving pretty consistently and running against very nice horses and running against horses like Burnham Square and Kalahari Dreams, who we talked about earlier, Monet's Magic and Render Judgment, and Chancellor McPatrick and Filoso and Spurgeon. These are all nice horses, Extradition. So has run against good horses and just wasn't his day last time out. So maybe this horse moves forward to 12-1. Absolutely feasible. And like I said, he's not for me, but I'm not against him in terms of being an underneath finisher who runs pretty well. The horse that I'm going to take a shot with, and I know it's crazy. As I say this, I know it's kind of crazy to use this horse, is Septarian. And there's just a few things I can't get around with this horse. And I should mention a horse like Vasimo is a horse that I also wrote about in my top 4 that kind of gets moved up a little bit for Todd Pletcher, Ryan Ortiz Jr. There has been a story that broke that this horse tested positive for betamethasone, but he is being allowed to run in this race. Betamethasone, of course, it was an overage, not a banned substance, simply a substance that is regulated. Difference between those things. And so it is something just to keep in mind, though, with Vasimo. But Septarian, number 7 horse, 12-1 on the morning line for Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt on the mount. The horse has a bizarre story to get here, where you look at, shares the same sire as Medina Spirit, is bred for turf underneath, is RNA'd at the sales for $1,700, ends up in Javier Contreras' barn, debuting at Charlestown, going 4.5, wins, goes 6 at Laurel, wins, then goes to the Mucho Macho Man, purchased by Resolute Racing, goes to Chad Brown's barn, and they enter this horse in the Mucho Macho Man as a result. The horse doesn't run bad that day. Passes some horses late, kind of the notes are accurate, kind of evenly runs, doesn't really make up ground as much as passes horses who just don't like the distance, but finishes third in that Mucho Macho Man. Now, here's the problem. The Mucho Macho Man has come back atrocious. Guns Loaded was terrible in the Holy Bull. I didn't think he was going to be particularly good in the Holy Bull. I had very serious distance questions about him. Treaty of Rome, I know there was some speculation he might have bled in that Sam F. Davis. I don't know if that's true. That was purely speculation online. I have no idea if that's true. I have no confirmation. There's been no word about that. But that horse did really stop a little bit in the stretch. It was pulled up. So I do wonder if something just maybe the rider felt something off about that horse, etc. But no matter the case, the top two horses, Guns Loaded and Treaty of Rome, coming out of the Mucho Macho Man, lost their next race by a combined 70 lengths. Now, here I am telling you, here's a value play for a horse that finished third behind those two going longer. But what I'll tell you is there's plenty of pedigree to suggest this horse can go long. Chad's spotting this horse in the Risen Star. Again, this might just be me projecting, but you don't win multiple Eclipse Awards by going, you know what, I'm going to put a horse well and over his head after a third place finish. He's putting this horse in a really tough spot, and he picks up his top jockey, Flavian Pratt. Blinkers are coming on for this horse. Expect this horse to show a little bit better early speed. I just think there's something there with this horse. And I also love the fact this horse has been firing off bullets leading up to this race. Down at Payson Place, you see at Payson Park, first of 44, 49 flat, 4 furlong, 48 and 3, first of 48, 4 furlong, leading up to this race. Has a couple of other works leading up to this one as well after that race. So a little bit more foundation. I think the pedigree can go longer, particularly on the underneath side. And again, it's a crazy idea at 12-1 coming out of the opposite of a key race, but I just think there's something there with this horse. And you might be surprised this horse could jump up and really run well at a big price. But listen, a horse like Built at 5-1 could run a big price. I know a lot of people like Magnitude in this race as well at a little bit of a price at 12-1. I certainly would get that. There's other horses to look for in this race. Like I said, American's Promise. I like East Avenue up top, but I get it if you want to go another direction and want to try to find a little bit of value. Well, listen, this one took a little over an hour, but again, we had 14 races, so please cut me a little bit of slack and grade on a curve. But hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to press that like button and subscribe on NYRA Bets YouTube today. We have a lot of great content coming up the coming weeks, so make sure to check all of that great stuff out. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.